All right. So I believe that every person has. So this, I'm going to enter slightly wooey territory, but I mean, you can translate this into secular stuff. I'm just going to talk about it like directly, which is that I believe that everybody has a certain voltage, and like you can try and find some kind of maybe maybe you can measure it in emotional resonance, and you can go into an MRI and look at the brain, or you can talk about nerve endings and stuff like that. But I'm talking in a more symbolic kind of sense. Like everybody has a voltage, which is the amount of energy, emotional energy. I don't know if there's such a thing as psychic energy. I believe that this is what when you read about like in Chinese texts, you read about qi, and you read in like Hindu texts. I mean, or like Indian stuff talking about like unblocking your chakras. Like there's all these. It's interesting that whether or not you believe those things are literally true, it's interesting that there, in like Polynesian culture, there's this idea of mana, right? Like, and it's interesting that in all these different cultures, there's this concept of some kind of life force. I guess some people might say it's your soul, and without being too eager to say, oh, that doesn't exist. There's no scientific proof for that. Like this, it's interesting that so many different cultures all kind of have the same vague idea of this kind of energy. And I'm going to suggest that maybe we could consider this kind of energy as a kind of emotional energy, maybe, or like a narrative energy. It's just how much, you know, like confidence and conviction with which you can have your actions. And that's contextualized by the story that you're in, right? And I believe that, and you could call it like the sacred flame. Maybe there's so many, like Prometheus and the flame. There's so many metaphors for this, but there's some kind of energy or life force. So however this resonates with you, it might. And if it's totally bullshit, then disregard it. But if something is resonating, consider what the expression of your sacred flame or your voltage or your chi or your mana, or consider what the expression of that is, and think about what it would be like to turn that up, right? And so, like, the objects around you, your friends around you, everybody, your entire life is kind of a manifestation of that energy. And it's how excited are you to wake up in the morning, right? Like when you wake up in the morning, if you have a friend flying in from across the planet that you're really looking forward to meeting, you get excited. You're like, oh fuck, I can't wait to wake up and go and meet this guy for lunch. And you can like that. So that is the obvious kind of great thing to look forward to. And sometimes it's like some terrible shit that you don't want to look forward to, and then you feel the energy levels dip. You're like, oh, I gotta go to file my taxes, or some dumb shit that you don't want to do. And so that's kind of like, I think, the spectrum of like your energy level. Again, I use the word energy very flippantly. I don't know what I'm talking about, but like, if you once you consider that, and then consider that there's probably some kind of baseline level of where your energy is, your man, whatever you want to call it, right? I call it voltage from fun. And like the objects in your life and the books on your shelf and everything kind of adds up into kind of you will be at some level of homeostasis. Like you will be at some level that you have deemed appropriate. So like how much excitement you bring to a party, or to how kind of energetically you throw yourself into your work, like whatever it is that you're doing, like you bring some level of that thing with you, your spirit, mana, whatever thing with you. And I just invite you to consider, what would it take to turn that dial up? Like you're probably the average person is probably at like a 6 or a 5. If you're listening to the podcast, maybe 6.5 ish, 7. Like just for fun, just imagine what it would be like to turn it up to 10, turn it up to 11. And like if you went crazy and you just freaking like lightning bursting through your veins, like what would your life look like then? Like how violently would you modify your, like what would that kind of violent expression look like for your clothes, would you wear makeup? I mean, that's the visual element. Would you seek out friends? Would you travel? Would you suddenly, like, if your voltage went all the way up, would you suddenly pick up motorbike racing? Just kind of wild flights of fancy. Just consider what a high voltage life might look for you, and then from there, maybe ask yourself, what would it be like if you turned it up a little bit? And then, I believe that once you just start experimenting with those questions, you will probably find that actually you could live a higher voltage life than you're currently living. You would probably enjoy it, and you just haven't done it yet because nobody ever encourages you to do it, because it higher voltage life is a more volatile life. It's a more unpredictable life. It's the potential. There's more potential upside, and there's also more potential downside. And nobody wants to. You tell your friend, "Hey, go and do something crazy," and then they come back and they're like injured or something, and then they're like, "Oh, it's your fault that I went cliff diving and broke my leg." So I'm not saying you should go cliff diving, but you should consider what your equivalent of going cliff diving would be, and have that kind of articulate that for yourself, and maybe make plans to consider doing some of it, and live a more passionate, excited life. Yeah, that's my invitation. Turn up the voltage, guys.